Kokichi wasn't in the dining hall for breakfast. No one else seemed to notice this small detail, or care about this small detail for that matter. Because of this, the dining hall seemed calmer, without the little liar there to be loud and to joke around. It was almost a nice environment with how quiet it was. That silence spoke volumes. Shuichi was sitting next to Kaito and Maki, as he would do every morning. Sure, anyone who can see Shuichi when he wakes up would know that this wasn't always fully his free will. Regardless of that, Kaito was still so hell-bent on getting Shuichi up every morning by knocking on his door, personally asking him if he would join him for breakfast, before coming into his room to make sure he leaves. Kurumi was already bringing food around for each of the students. Sure, they were still in a killing game, but that doesn't mean that they all just suddenly don't trust each other. So Kurumi took it upon herself to be the one to prepare the meals for them, and none of the ultimates could be seen complaining about that change. The room was full of chatter, and even Kaito and Maki were having a good conversation, while Shuichi was more distant from them. Shuichi just looked dazed. Not because he didn't sleep well. It was because of the odd feeling of knowing Kokichi wasn't there, and knowing he's the only one who seems to be bothered by that. "You not feeling hungry, sidekick?" Kaito asked, in his announcer-like voice. Shuichi looked over at him lazily, before looking down at his food with the same gaze. "Huh? Yeah. I guess I don't feel that hungry." He lied with a kind smile, knowing Kaito would believe him even if he wasn't wearing the fake smile. Kaito seemed a bit concerned, but Kaito wasn't one to nag about little things like this, unless they end up happening more and more. "That's too bad. Kurumi really cooked up a nice breakfast, as she always does," Kaito yelled, his laughter following shortly after. Shuichi just smiled again before he slowly stood up. "So if you'll excuse me," he said politely. "Yeah, no worries," Kaito said as Shuichi walked out of the dining hall. Shuichi smiled at how happy and content Kaito sounded. He always wanted to be able to be more confident, like Kaito, but he is always shy by nature, so that ends up making things more difficult. His feet led him outside. He didn't really know where he wanted to go, and he frankly didn't care.
What if he really is dead?
Shuichi thought to himself, feeling his habit of playing with the rim of his hat come back into motion. He didn't know something like Kokichi missing breakfast for the first time would be so anxiety-inducing. He sighed to himself as he walked towards the dormitory. It was in that moment he could almost feel his anxieties present, as if the wind was able to be seen and not just felt. It sent a chill down his spine. He just needed to go check up on him. That would make this feeling go away, wouldn't it? Kokichi's dorm was one of the ones that was at the top. Shuichi walked up the stairs with slow and shaky steps, feeling nervous that maybe this feeling he was feeling wasn't just anxiety. Maybe it was his intuition telling him that something could have happened to Kokichi and how he could have been killed. It didn't make sense to Shuichi as to why someone would decide to just randomly kill Kokichi. Sure, he lies a lot and teases others almost constantly, but that doesn't make him a person who is deserving of being killed over that. At least, that's how Shuichi saw things. He knocked on the door, hoping to get a response from Kokichi. There was silence. This silence was almost like a gunshot to start the race of Shuichi's bottled anxiety. His hand shook as he stood trembling in front of Kokichi's dorm.
I should just go and check up on him. That shouldn't be weird, should it?
That thought was like a drop of red blood in a cup of clear water. It started in one place before it slowly started to consume him. His thought, his fear, his words, his everything. A tear fell to the ground. Sure, what Shuichi was here for could be seen as selfish. But he just needed to see Kokichi. See his smile, his laugh, and even hear his stupid lies. He just needed Kokichi in that moment to feel okay. He knocked on the door once more before there was a click, indicating that the door was opened. Kokichi opened the door and looked him dead in the eyes. His eyes were droopy, and he just looked sick. Kokichi? Shuichi questioned, not knowing exactly how to feel. He didn't feel anxious, but he felt nervous about Kokichi getting sick. How long has he been sick for? Hello, Shuichi. I was just in my room. Did you come because you wanted to come inside? He laughed while his face was a deep red. He almost seemed like he was a little drunk. Almost. Kokichi. Shuichi gasped, moving his hand to cover his cheeks as they turned red, almost like a traffic light, abruptly telling you to stop. You are so cute when you blush. Kokichi cooed as his body swayed in the doorway. Alarmed by the sudden motion, Shuichi moved to hold him in his arms to keep him from falling on the floor. This only elicted a giggle from Kokichi. My hero, he whispered as he suddenly went limp in Shuichi's arms. Shuichi looked down at the small boy under him. His eyes were closed, and the blush he had earlier was still present on his cheeks. But instead of looking as though he was drunk, he looked like he was outside in the cold for too long, and Shuichi was the warmth he needed to be able to relax. So you were sick after all, Shuichi said, sounding confused, but he wasn't really asking a question. Kokichi gave him a sideways glance as his words slurred. Yes, Sai-chan. He giggled a bit. I can't feel my arms. He laughed again, making Shuichi more concerned. People were starting to come by the dorm, so Shuichi quickly moved him and Kokichi into Kokichi's room. There was a moment of silence after he closed the door. This moment was so quiet that you could hear Kokichi's slow breathing. Saihara, are you gonna do things to me? Was that your plan all along? He cooed, putting his hands on Shuichi's chest. Shuichi yelped a bit, making Kokichi fall back on his ass. Jeez, it was only a joke. It wasn't even that funny. He smiled before trying to slowly get up. Shit. This hurts, he said, falling back onto the floor. Shuichi was by his side in an instant and held his back. Sorry, I got embarrassed. Shuichi apologized to him before Kokichi laughed again. It's alright. I have a talent for making you embarrassed. It almost makes me think that you like me. He smirked when Shuichi's face inflamed. Aw, you do? Now I can have an emo high school sweetheart. What I always wanted. He laughed again. Shuichi just paused and tried to calm his burning face down. Okay, I think getting some rest would be good. It seems you have a fever, Shuichi said, finally trying to ignore the two voice cracks that came from the past embarrassment. Aww, you were no fun. Kokichi crossed his arms and turned away from Shuichi, pouting a bit. Shuichi knew he must have been lying about being angry, but it still made him feel a little bad. Here, how about if you get some rest and let yourself get over this sickness, we can go and do something together. Of course, by something, Shuichi meant on a date, but the look Kokichi gave him made Shuichi regret phrasing it that way. Okay, Chimai. Don't do anything too bad, Kokichi said softly as Shuichi helped him into bed. Shuichi found it cute how loopy he was while he was sick, but didn't want to admit that, in fact, Kokichi was right about one thing. Shuichi does have feelings for him. Sure, it's not the typical, I have a crush on this person. It's more along the lines of, I'm interested in this person. Kokichi interested Shuichi because of all of his lies, and his cute demeanor. Sure, he can be a bit much, but aside from all that, Shuichi likes him quite a bit. Just get some rest, Kokichi, Shuichi said, holding his hand over his mouth to hide his blush. Alright, Kokichi said, finally giving in to sleep. I'll see you when you get better, Shuichi said gently before brushing a strand of hair off his forehead. And maybe I'll tell you, I like you.